This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, emerging market stocks ended the day in a positive territory, tracking gains in Asia, as of course data showed a jump in Chinese industrial profits. Now, MSCI's emerging market index was up 0.9% on the day and on track for its best day in 2 weeks. Also, a positive day on the continent. All of Africa's major markets were up. South Africa's JSE climbed over 2%, as of course positive economic data did help to lift sentiment, although some geopolitical issues and rising COVID-19 cases in Europe remained a threat. Now, also coming up on today's show, Nigeria's costly subsidies dilemma. And to legalize or not Ghana's deadly motorcycle taxis. Also, a U.S. federal judge temporarily blocks President Donald Trump's order to ban TikTok. Well, let's start off today's show in Nigeria. A planned strike over fuel and power price rises in Nigeria was called off hours before businesses were due to grind to a halt earlier on Monday. Nigerian labor unions and the government agreed on an initial reversal of those hikes. Labor and Employment Minister Festus Keyamo said the deregulation of petrol pump prices would remain in place, but the government would roll out a financial support package for workers. Now, the country cut costly subsidies back in September in order to allow the petrol price to be determined by the market and increased the electricity tariff. President Muhammadu Buhari said Nigeria could no longer afford those subsidies. A joint committee comprising of government officials and labor union members will, over a 2-week period, examine the justification for the electricity tariff policy. Well, let's get more insight into the situation on ground. We're joined by Deji Badmus in Lagos. Deji, great to have you with us today. Now, given that we've seen labor unions protesting the increase of those petrol prices and, of course, electricity tariffs, it certainly seems like they'll not be getting exactly what they want after yesterday's midnight meeting. Break it down for us, Deji. What happened?
Well, Uche, it's difficult to say that the labor unions did not get what they want. But let me just break it down. What exactly did they get? They were able to reach an agreement to suspend the new electricity tariff for the next 2 weeks. A technical committee was set up. That technical committee is composed of government and labor officials now. They would look at the justification now for the new tariff, look at what is militating against the deployment of mass metering, as well as look at the timeline now for metering every electricity consumer in this country. Now, the labor unions also agreed that they should be on the boards of some of these discos. I'm talking about the distribution companies, because the argument is that since the government owns about 40% stake in these distribution companies, and then the stake of the workers are also represented, they want that reflected in the board. The government accepted that. Now, in terms of fuel subsidy, the labor unions accepted that, yes, fuel subsidy should be removed, but of course they got what most Nigerians will want to call palliatives. For instance, they got the government to accept to give them 133 buses immediately now. So those 133 buses are expected to be released to the unions. They are mass transit buses now to help cushion the effect of the removal of fuel now on transport. They also expect to see that the government will provide these buses in major cities across the country. Other things they succeeded in getting the government to provide money now for about 240,000 workers now, for them to be able to access that money and go into agricultural ventures. In terms of housing, they were able to get the government to accept to give them at least 10% allocation now in the housing program that the government is executing. So somehow they were able to get quite a lot of concessions from the government, and I would say it's a win-win situation for both sides. You know, the government is able, for instance, to remove the subsidy, and to some extent, what happens to the electricity tariff eventually will be determined after that technical committee. That's after 2 weeks now, when that technical committee would have met. So not a very bad one now for the labor unions. Uche?
Well, the labor unions also say it's not over just yet. They actually will be reviewing the progress made by government in another 2 weeks. So what do you expect to happen in those 2 weeks? Can government achieve all these things they have agreed to?
Not at all. I do not expect to see the government achieve all of meet all of the demands now, and the labor unions know this. There are setting demands now that the government can actually meet, like in terms of the buses now. I think we're going to see a deployment of those buses. So they're setting, in terms of the funding now, the funding for agricultural venture, that might take maybe more than 2 weeks now to actualize. But of course, the labor unions will be looking at how committed the government is to that. Now, in terms of the issue of electricity, I think when that technical committee meets, it would be able to determine whether the new electricity tariff is justified, and what would need to be done in terms of metering everyone in the country. So obviously, there's no question at all that the labor unions understand that there are certain items on their list that will not be met immediately, but that there are certain that would have to be met immediately for them to determine how serious the government is. And, you know, and I think the government too would want to demonstrate good faith to give them the assurance that it means it is committed to the agreement it reached with them.
Now, as you mentioned, Deji, a lot of this depends on the government following through on plans to cut that subsidy and deregulate Nigeria's oil and gas sector. So has there been any progress on that long-awaited oil sector reform bill? Of course, last we heard is that President Buhari had sent that bill to the Senate. It's still awaiting for him to sign off on it yet. So what's happening with that?
Well, Uche, look, there's a new petroleum industry bill. The president has just sent it to back to the Senate. That's the new petroleum industry bill now. The Senate has received it. It will be read on the Senate floor tomorrow when the Senate begins sitting. As a matter of fact, today, members of the National Assembly, I'm talking about Parliament here, they met with the Minister of State for Petroleum and some government officials, and the topic was the petroleum industry bill submitted by the president. And now this bill was actually submitted by the president on Sunday. So they actually met to iron out the gray areas. So by tomorrow, we expect that the bill now would be read on the floor in the Senate and the House of Representatives. And I mean, the Parliament has given commitment that it would ensure that there's a speedy passage and that it would ensure a thorough job is done. So we have a new petroleum industry bill before Parliament. And what we're gathering, what we're learning is that part of the recommendation, part of the items now, or part of the things contained in the bill is the scrapping of NNPC. It will be replaced by NNPC Nigeria Limited. We're going to see a lot, you know, new agencies now come up, but then we just have to wait until the bill is formally read in Parliament tomorrow. So there is some progress. How long it will take the Senate or the National Assembly now to go through and pass the bill would be the next big question. Uche?
Well, it's certainly exciting because Nigeria has waited about 20 years for this. Well, thank you so much for your insights, Deji. Of course, that's Deji Badmus joining us there in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's head to Kenya now, where a dusk to dawn curfew has been extended for 2 months, but reduced to 5 hours a day after a drop in COVID-19 infections. Now, through a televised address, President Uhuru Kenyatta has announced a further easing of restrictions, including the reopening of bars.
It may not have been a complete end to lockdown restrictions imposed by the government nearly 6 months ago, but for many Kenyans, the further raising of strict measures by President Uhuru Kenyatta point to the reopening of society and the economy. There's been mounting pressure to kickstart the country's ailing economy after months of restrictions have devastated key industries, with close to 2 million Kenyans out of work.
The nationwide curfew enforced throughout the territory of the Republic of Kenya is extended for a further 60 days. The nationwide dusk to dawn curfew will run from 11 o'clock at night to 4 o'clock in the morning.
From Tuesday, bars will be allowed to reopen and sell alcohol, while closing times for restaurants have been extended to 10 p.m. Seating capacity in churches and mosques has been increased by 1/3, while the number of people attending weddings and funerals has been revised upwards from 100 to 200. The president also urged politicians to follow social distancing guidelines.
We thank Kenyans, but it is we, the political class especially, that is leading the charge in defying laid down protocol.
President Kenyatta says the decision to phase out some of the measures are as a result of the falling COVID-19 infection rates. Experts have, however, warned not enough testing is being done. Meanwhile, the president says schools may have to wait a while longer, possibly to 2021, until the government can guarantee the safety of children. President Kenyatta also extended tax incentives announced earlier this year to 2021 to encourage economic growth. Earlier, he hosted a key conference aimed at charting a responsible path in regards to living with COVID-19. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
And in some corporate headlines, shareholders of struggling Kenyan retailer Tuskys have held a crunch meeting to discuss the approval of a $20 million loan from an offshore fund. Now, this is amid a rare truce amongst the rowing siblings who own the retail chain. Shares in the retail chain are expected to be used as security for the debt, putting the ownership of existing shareholders at risk in the event of a default. Meanwhile, Nigeria's Julius Berger, which is Nigeria's largest construction company, has approved a diversification opportunity for the company in agro-processing. This comes after the company notified the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the capital market community of that opportunity. The board's decision is based on its quest for more operational rigor and also reforms by the government. Meanwhile, Qatar Airways is set to receive a $1.95 billion cash injection from the government after reporting a loss of $1.87 billion in the year to March 31st. The lifeline was provided to the airline after annual losses exceeded 50% of a share capital and was later converted into new shares. The true impact of the coronavirus pandemic on Qatar Airways remains unclear as global lockdowns continue beyond its financial year-end. And finally, shares in Siemens Energy opened lower than expected on their first day of trading on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. This comes as the business gears up for a standalone future independent from its parent company, Siemens. Shares in Siemens opened at $25.67 apiece on Monday, giving the company a market value of about $18.6 billion. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. We are heading into a short break now, but still coming up on the show. Ghana grapples with legalizing motorcycle taxis as accidents rise. And a 6-month grace period for loan repayments in Egypt comes to an end as economic activity takes up.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why.
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra.
Hello, Naro.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
Africa is home to 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land. The continent has yet to reach its full farming potential. From support to local farmers and reliance on rain, to exports, new technologies and innovation, how is Africa faring in the agricultural value chain? Well, CGTN traversed the continent to bring you a 6-part in-depth series on food production in Africa. This October on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, hundreds of exiles have been streaming in from around the world to Sudan since last year. The returnees say they are looking to help rebuild the country as it emerges from 3 decades of autocratic rule. Well, Chao Mungono brings us the story of some of these returnees.
Sudan's economy has been in crisis. After long years of civil war under Omar al-Bashir's rule, U.S. sanctions and the 2011 secession of the oil-rich South. But many Sudanese saw the ouster of Bashir in April 2019 as a new beginning for the country. So when Bashir was forced out, many Sudanese living abroad were eager to return home. Many of them have been away for over 30 years.
There is no comparison between the salary I was paid in Canada and the salary I have here. It is difficult, but thanks be to God, so far my situation here isn't so bad. This is my sacrifice for the sake of the country. So if we were to calculate the gain, we will never return.
I left South Sudan in 2011 after the war and the peace agreement between Sudan and now South Sudan, from the city of Kadugli. I left as a citizen with the clothes I had on and left the home I had been building for 5 years. I left alone. I left my family at home as I thought that this conflict would not last long.
The two are not alone. Many Sudanese have returned to fill posts in government and at state enterprises.
People who return from abroad are welcomed, considering that you are abroad, that you are returning to your family and friends and your country. As for your integration into work or organizations, people from abroad are also welcomed, as they are considered to have different competencies, experiences and education, and that they can offer something to Sudan.
We are Sudanese in the end, and these jobs are not permanent but rather temporary for everyone. Our presence in these jobs is only to provide a service to these people.
While the return has not been universally welcomed, the returnees say they bring experience and knowledge. The other challenge that they face is that they are used to working in a more organized system in more stable countries. That's not always the case in Sudan. The returnees are, however, confident that they will survive the transition. Chao Mungono, CGTN.
And in Ghana, the debate on whether to legalize commercial motorbike transport or not rages on as the country prepares for the polls in December. While motorbike taxis serve as a form of employment for many young people in the country, there are still safety concerns. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
A normal working day for Kwame Yeboah as he waits for passengers. It's illegal to use motorbikes for commercial transport in Ghana, but Kwame has found ways of beating the system. He has been in this job for 6 years.
Due to how the police catch us, at the same time, because we read traffic light, we can't stop. Because the policeman is there. If you stop, he will catch you. So you try to rush into the traffic and cause accident.
Commercial motorbike transport, popularly called Okada, derived its name from Nigeria, where it is the most common form of public transport in cities with heavy traffic. But in February, the Nigerian government banned its use in its first capital city, Lagos, due to safety concerns. In Ghana, opinions are divided on whether or not to legalize commercial motorbike transport.
This Okada thing is just a nuisance on our roads. They are a serious threat to our road users. For me, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for the whole nation or for anybody else. For me, I think that's the last thing we deserve as a country. Legalization of Okada. I don't support it and would never support it.
I want the motorbike taxis to be legalized because it helps with easy movement in town.
Okada employs hundreds of young people in Ghana. Riders carry people to places where buses find it difficult to access. But last year, more than 4,600 road crashes involved motorbikes and caused more than 700 deaths. The motorbikes are not just a cheaper means of transportation. They also help many people beat heavy traffic on the city's roads. The Okada is also dominating political discussions as the country prepares for general elections. The largest opposition party, the National Democratic Congress, is campaigning to legalize Okada when it wins power, while the governing New Patriotic Party, on the other hand, says it will not. But safety experts want commercial motorbike transport to be legalized in Ghana despite the risks it poses to motorists.
It's a necessary form of transportation for a class of or a section of the population. That's one. And then two, we can make it safer.
Kwame Yeboah agrees. He says his decision on whom to vote for during the elections in December will be influenced by which party will legalize commercial motorbike transport in Ghana. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Meanwhile, in Egypt, a 6-month freeze on loan repayments has come to an end as the country's economic activities gradually resume. Now, in March, Egypt's Apex Bank decided to put off loan payments in order to ease pressure on its borrowers following an economic downturn caused by the outbreak of COVID-19. Here's Yasser Hakim with the details.
Egypt is currently registering an average of 120 COVID cases a day, down from around 1,500 a couple of months ago. The success in keeping the pandemic relatively under control has allowed the economy to gradually reopen. Most sectors are resuming work, and production is also increasing. That's why the central bank has not extended a 6-month freeze on loan payments from individuals and companies, although there were demands for an extension.
The decision to freeze loan payments back in March was a good one because it relieved a lot of pressure off borrowers who were unable to pay installments during the pandemic. The CBE didn't extend the loan freeze because banks can't sustain unpaid loans any further. Banks have financial obligations towards clients, and revenues lost in the last 6 months is about 2 trillion Egyptian pounds, which is equivalent to $127 billion.
About 5 million people and 80,000 companies have benefited from this loan payment freeze. Aware that Egyptians are still suffering from the economic fallout caused by the pandemic, the CBE governor, Tariq Amir, has ordered financial institutions to restructure the loans for their clients.
Banks should study each case and provide new credit facilities according to the capabilities of each client. For example, if an individual or company proves that he can only pay half his installments because he lost his income during the coronavirus, the bank would restructure the loan payment to suit his new situation.
The economy is slowly recovering from the effects of COVID-19, but the virus itself has not yet been completely eradicated. That's why the government is trying to balance between providing support to those suffering from the pandemic and returning to normality. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And staying in Egypt, the country is launching a new campaign for eco-tourism dubbed Eco-Egypt. Now, the program aims to develop natural habitats in the country to expand revenue for tourism. The project also works on empowering the local communities, such as the Bedouins. Here's Adel El Mahoui with the details.
Right next to Egypt's famous Sharm el-Sheikh resort city lies Ras Mohammed. It's the oldest natural preservatory and the only national park in Egypt. The International Union for Conservation of Nature added this place on its green list for effective management of marine ecosystem. Only 65 locations are on that global list. Due to this unique characteristic of the place, Egypt chose Ras Mohammed to launch its new Eco-Egypt project.
We have 30 natural preserves in Egypt, but only 13 of them are part of Eco-Egypt. These are the sites next to tourist destinations. The purpose is to enrich the environmental tourism industry in Egypt and also to develop these preserves and empower the local communities who are protecting these areas.
Eco-Egypt aims to campaign for biological rich sites instead of relying mostly on recreational and culture tourism. The campaign will also shed the light on local communities.
The domestic culture is one of the main pivots supporting ecotourism. Tribes have a rich culture to pass on to the visitors. Eco-Egypt initiative works to empower the local communities and give tourists a different experience of those people, or are considered part of that environment.
Empowering the locals like Bedouins include giving them exclusive tourism concessions at some preserves. They offer camping experience next to the beach, which includes their additional food and culture.
This renewed consciousness that our government has in valorizing our natural heritage, in valorizing our cultural heritage, and linking them into an enterprise for sustainable development is something that is really very important. We need to understand that the environment, our natural assets, and our cultural heritage are sources for an improved livelihood. This has not sunk in yet in the minds of consumers, but it will come. It is beginning to become mainstream.
Each natural preserve will include a museum like this one to create awareness about the creatures living here and the dangers they face. Experts are currently studying the maximum number of visitors for each of the 13 sites to avoid interrupting their delicate ecosystems.
One of the concepts of Eco-Egypt is to merge the information gained from museums like this one into a live entertaining experience where visitors can have a swim in the Red Sea and see for themselves these creatures alive. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.
Now in Somalia, the tourism sector is experiencing progressive growth following the return of relative peace and calm in the country after decades of violence. Well, cities situated along the Indian Ocean have registered booming small-scale businesses during the weekend as residents flock to enjoy leisure activities with their families. Tourism operators are also offering transport to the remote, untapped sand beaches in the outskirts of those cities. According to the Tourism Ministry, the government is considering the revival of popular beach hotels such as Uruba and Juba that were destroyed during the conflict. Meanwhile, Chinese ambassadors to Kenya and South Africa have been holding receptions for China's National Day. The day marks the 71st anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Now, officials from Kenya and South Africa highlighted the critical role China has played as a development partner. CGTN's Enoch Sikolia reports from Nairobi.
That the event was marked virtually did not stop celebrations. Songs and dances from South Africa and Kenya were conducted online. The cultural performances emphasized the long-standing bond between China and the African countries. China's ambassador to South Africa used the opportunity to communicate the support of China to the African country amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
as President Ramaphosa said at the UN summit. As the international community, let's choose cooperation above unilateralism. Let's choose solidarity above isolation. Let's choose unity of purpose above narrow self-interest.
South Africa's Public Enterprises Minister lauded China's role in ensuring development, peace and security of his country, neighboring countries and Africa as a whole.
That our two countries will continue to steadfastly pursue the collaboration to the betterment of all of our people, both in our respective countries and in our regions.
Indeed, China's trade and investments are changing Africa. There is the standard gauge railway system in Kenya, among other infrastructure developments in South Africa, Ethiopia, and across the continent. China officials said these partnerships will grow with time. This was the message delivered in Kenya as well.
Let us join hands to uphold the values of peace, development, equity, justice, democracy, and freedom shared by all of us, and build a new type of international relations and a community with a shared future for mankind.
Kenya's political and diplomatic secretary, Tom Omolo, emphasized China's importance to Kenya's development agenda.
Indeed, this partnership has augmented the delivery of our targets in various fields encapsulated in our development blueprint, Vision 2030, and also the Big Four agenda.
China says it's focused on building relationships and enhancing global trade. Enoxikolia, CGTN, Nairobi.
You are watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now, but still to come on the show. A U.S. federal judge temporarily blocks President Donald Trump's order to ban TikTok. And SoftBank sees the opportunity for food service robots as Japan grapples with labor shortages.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
And recapping other headlines this hour, Mali is on course for sanctions imposed by regional bloc ECOWAS to be lifted following the appointment of a civilian prime minister. Now, Moktar Wane was previously Mali's ambassador to the United Nations and the country's foreign minister. The Economic Community of West African States cut off financial flows to Mali and closed borders after the August ouster of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Meanwhile, Uganda is set to take part in coronavirus vaccine trials in November. The vaccine uses self-replicating RNA technology and is already being trialed in the UK. Egypt has been witnessing a drop in tourist numbers after requiring visitors to provide a negative coronavirus test. Now, to make the process easier for much-needed visitors, the country's Red Sea resort airports are now offering PCR tests on arrival. And finally, government schools have reopened in Zimbabwe, but in the absence of teachers who are on strike over pay. There are also concerns over provisions of water and protective gear at those schools. And that's a recap of the top headlines this hour. Well, let's now head to the U.S., where a federal judge has temporarily blocked President Donald Trump's order to ban TikTok just hours before it was due to come into effect. CGTN's Jagruti Dave has the latest out of Washington.
President Trump's ban would have removed TikTok from US app stores, but it will still be available there for now. US District Court Judge Carl Nichols put a pause on the Trump administration's move, granting TikTok an injunction it had filed against the order. TikTok's lawyers say the move violates due process, and the Justice Department's lawyers defended the move, saying it was there to protect TikTok users' personal data. And the judgment was sealed, so the reasoning for the opinion was not given, but the judge didn't rule on a second action that's due to take place in November. The US Commerce Department says that it will ban completely ban TikTok if it doesn't finalize a deal with a US company for its American operations by November the 12th. In a statement, TikTok said that it was pleased with the ruling, adding, "We will continue defending our rights for the benefit of our community and employees." The Trump administration claims that the Chinese-owned app poses a national security threat. TikTok's Beijing-based parent company ByteDance is still working out a partnership deal with US companies Oracle and Walmart. Jagruti Dave, CGTN, Washington.
Now, as an app for entertainment, TikTok has over 100 million users in the United States. CGTN's Yao Yang takes a look at how people reacted to the latest move.
Another dramatic move in this back-and-forth game between TikTok and the US government. A federal judge has suspended the administration's ban on downloads of the app in America. The result seemed to be welcome news to many young people in the US.
Me and my friends had talked at this problem before, and we both think that it's quite unnecessary just for the government to target on the Chinese companies.
So I think it's definitely a case of it seems like Trump maybe just wanting to make an example out of TikTok and just picking TikTok specifically. So I don't know if I can say it's the right or the wrong move. I think it's just a result of the political situation in the United States.
The company has been caught in a seesaw battle with Oracle and Walmart for selling part of its business to the two US giant companies for nearly a month, after US President Donald Trump suddenly claimed the popular entertainment app is threatening his national security.
They're working to see if they can make a deal, and if they make a deal, they'll have to bring it to me, and I'll either approve it or not. To me, safety is the predominant factor, and we'll see if they can do that. But they're moving along, and let's see what happens.
Chinese government has responded to the tussle, saying it will take necessary measures to safeguard Chinese companies' rights.
China supports the companies concerned in defending their legitimate rights and interests through legal means, and will continue taking all necessary measures to firmly safeguard Chinese companies' rights and interests.
The popular video sharing app has over 600 million users worldwide. Nearly half of them are Chinese netizens.
There should not be borders for science and technology. Everyone has the right to enjoy the fun brought by an app for entertainment.
Is quite irritating because I have a lot of friends in the US who use TikTok as well as I do, and I feel it's getting banned is kind of unnecessary.
There hasn't been an official response from TikTok's parent company ByteDance, but Trump's order stops short of a full ban until November 12, giving its Chinese parent firm time to push for a deal. Yu Yang, CGTN, Beijing.
Now, one of China's largest chip makers, SMIC, is still awaiting its fate after threats from the U.S. Commerce Department that it will impose restrictions on the Chinese company. Our Yang Shengxi explains how significant the impact could be if the U.S. follows through on its threat.
Reports that a U.S. Commerce Department letter will require the American chip sector to obtain licenses before exporting certain technology to China's Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation created waves over the weekend. Now, the reported restrictions would prevent SMIC from easily acquiring crucial equipment and design tools from key American suppliers, such as Lam Research, KLA, and Applied Materials. Now, research from Jefferies estimates that about half of SMIC suppliers are American. Now, SMIC is one of China's largest semiconductor manufacturers, but it trails Taiwan's TSMC in both production scale and technology. Now, experts say the reported restrictions could cause a moderate supply shortage for the chip sector. The Commerce Department letter echoes the Trump administration's decision last year to put Huawei on its entity list, barring American companies from selling its products and technologies. However, the restrictions on the SMIC are different. The company wasn't put on the entity list. The letter instead requires American firms to obtain licenses before doing business with SMIC and cites concerns over, quote, unacceptable risk of diversion to a military end use in China. So what is the legal basis for such move? The Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security on April the 28th amended its export administration regulations. Under the amendment, the U.S. would impose export license requirements on an expanded scope of items destined for, quote, military end use or military end users in China, Russia, and Venezuela. Previously, U.S. companies had license exceptions that allowed them to do business with Chinese partners without prior review by the BIS. But such exceptions have now been cancelled, and the new rule significantly widens the definition of military end use. The SMIC said in a statement that it makes semiconductors and provides services solely for commercial end users and end users. It says that it has no relationship with the Chinese military. Yang Shengxi, CGTN, Shanghai.
Now, China has again urged the United States to stop using state power to harm foreign companies, and it is warning now of countermeasures.
China has always opposed the hegemonic behavior of the United States in generalizing the concept of national security, abusing state power, and unreasonably suppressing enterprises of other countries. We hope the U.S. side will earnestly respect the principles of market economy and fair competition, abide by the rules of international trade and economy, and provide an open, fair, and non-discriminatory business environment for foreign companies to invest and operate in the U.S.
Well, let's shift focus now to U.S. President Donald Trump's taxes. He reportedly paid extremely little in income taxes in recent years, as heavy losses from his business enterprises offset hundreds of millions of dollars in income. Now, the New York Times reports that President Trump paid just over $750 in federal income taxes in both 2016 and 2017. He has also not paid any income taxes in 10 of the last 15 years. This is despite receiving $427.4 million through 2018 from his reality television program and other endorsements and licensing deals. Now, the report also says that Trump was able to minimize his tax bill by reporting heavy losses across his business empire. The Times also reports that Trump claimed $47.4 million in losses during the 2018 period. And that's despite claiming income of at least $434.9 million in a financial disclosure the same year. However, President Trump has denied the report. He calls it total fake news. And moving on now, SoftBank's robotics arm has said it will bring a food service robot developed by California-based Bear Robotics to Japan. This is as restaurants grapple with labor shortages and seek to ensure social distancing during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the robot, named Servi, is equipped with 3D cameras and LiDAR sensors for navigation. It will launch in January next year. Now, Servi will cost $950 per month, excluding tax, on a 3-year plan. Servi has been tested by Japanese restaurant operators as the sector grapples with an aging workforce and deepening labor shortages. Meanwhile, the Beijing Auto Show 2020 officially opens to the public on Monday. That's after opening its doors to the press over the weekend. Our own Xia Cheng was there to find out why China is global automakers' best bet for sales recovery after COVID-19.
China's auto sales have rebounded to pre-pandemic levels, the first among major economies in the world. That's why, despite curbs on crowd size and logistics challenges, automakers are gathering here to showcase their new products, technology, and concept cars.
Looking to 2021 next year, we are also assessing with the industry experts. I think right now there is a trend towards positive growth in the China auto market. We haven't concluded yet. But I think the trend this year is going to slow down a little bit overall, but the trend still be upgrading intelligent EV as the major trend, which we have a very strong plan for.
Meanwhile, the demand in US and Europe remains to be weak. That's why automakers are banking on China to reverse their losses during the pandemic. German auto giant Volkswagen is stepping up its SUV launches in China, and its joint venture with China's state-owned SAIC Motor is ready to kick off its electric vehicle production in China in October. Jaguar Land Rover, UK's biggest car maker, saw sales suffer during the pandemic. It is taking a ride on China's green drive to pump up its China sales.
We are launching today the Discovery Sports plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. That's a first for the range here. It's based on technology manufactured here in China, so it's very exciting for us to launch it here. And it's a great product because it has all the green credentials you expect. Post the lockdown, China sales, especially in the premium segment, has been very strong this year. So we're optimistic that that will sustain at least to the end of 2020 and hopefully into 2021.
China wants to be a world leader in auto technology. It has been using subsidies and policy incentives to turn the country into the world's biggest electric vehicle market, accounting for half of global sales. In the meantime, to heat up the market competition, China in 2018 scrapped the foreign ownership limit for electric vehicle makers.
The very first stage is a pure cash subsidy to the OEM players, to the end consumers. I think the direction is from a pure cash subsidy into the industry to a more, I would say, internal balance between the different players, whereas a clear direction is given that we need more new energy vehicles in the market.
China dropped the crown of the world's largest electric vehicle market to Europe in 2020. But as the demand for greener cars rises, China is likely to regain the leadership in 2021. Xia Cheng, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, let's move on now and look at commodity markets today. Oil prices were down as rising coronavirus cases spurred concern about demand. Experts are saying, though, that the global oil market has been stable for the past few months and the demand-supply balance has been restored. But the risks of a second wave of COVID-19 cases still remains a threat for the market. Meanwhile, gold prices edging up today as the dollar slipped off a 2-month peak it hit last week, as of course the U.S. gears up for the first presidential election debate between Donald Trump and of course his Democratic rival Joe Biden. Well, let's head into a short break now, still coming up on the show. Female engineers in Nigeria defy stereotypes and scale roofs to power up the country.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent. to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Syria,
Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
to bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Now, it is difficult to find thriving startups in Nigeria away from the cities of Lagos and Abuja. Yet Nigeria has about 36 cities. Well, an entrepreneurship ecosystem known as Startup South now wants to change that. It is in the country's oil-rich Niger Delta region and has been focusing on startups in the southern and eastern regions of the country. Well, CGTN's Deji Badmus has this story.
With a community of over 5,000 budding entrepreneurs and 200 founders of startups, hashtag Startup South is evolving a new wave of entrepreneurship in the region of Nigeria where startups are not common and hardly thrive. From this hub in the city of Port Harcourt, in the heart of the Niger Delta region of the country, the convener of the startup ecosystem, Uche Okoronkwo, and his team are literally bringing entrepreneurship dreams to reality. They're providing founders of startups with the very essential skills they need to set out and scale.
We are making it possible for these young people to find, first and foremost, find themselves, network among themselves, learn the ropes in building high-skill, innovative businesses, and then go on to get support from angel investors and other support organizations that would help them grow their businesses.
Nigeria's oil wealth comes from its Delta region, but the area also has among the highest rate of youth unemployment in the country. Hashtag Startup South is hoping to develop a pool of young homegrown entrepreneurs as a means of solving the unemployment crisis in the region.
We have been able to support and help founders within our network raise over $500,000. This is something that was unthinkable when we started. If not for COVID-19, we were actually on course to hit the $1 million mark in terms of investment funds that our founders have been able to access.
Thanks to the efforts of the startup ecosystem, the number of thriving startups in Nigeria's South-South and Southeast regions is growing. One of them is this palm oil milling startup, KR Foods. With mentoring and funding from hashtag Startup South, the founder is now running a thriving enterprise and currently working with 25 farmers who are his primary suppliers.
We do about 1,000 bottles weekly, and with the funding we have secured from Startup South, we are looking to expand our capacity to 15,000 bottles monthly. So, and from there, we are looking at about 150,000 bottles over the next 2 years.
Our goal is that by the end of 2022, we should have done over $5 million in investment in funds that our founders have been able to access. We want to be able to grow the community, to at least 10,000 strong.
In 2018, hashtag Startup South collaborated with other ecosystem leaders, bringing different professionals from different industries from across the world to start an angel network. That network has now grown to 27 persons who are supporting and investing in startups founded by young people in the regions. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Port Harcourt, Nigeria.
And still in Nigeria, an executive at an energy company called Rensource is pushing to get more women engineers on rooftops, installing solar panels to provide power to homes and offices. Anu Adasolum's goal is to address the difficulties that female engineers face in securing jobs, while of course broadening access to energy in the country.
Two female electric engineers climb out of a manhole as they head to the top of one of the many buildings in the affluent Victoria Island. The job? Installing solar panels for a client. It's unusual to find female field engineers in Nigeria, but that is slowly changing.
In terms of trying to promote people up, making sure that in the future we're able to have supervisors and managers that are experienced field female engineers, we realized that we would have to take it from the start. So then we started a program where we recruit female engineers and basically train them.
Rensource started operations in 2017 and installed solar hybrid systems on a large scale to markets, industrial areas or single off-takers to buildings, delivering as much as 1.4 megawatts at one location.
It's really interesting, it's tasking, and I get the opportunity to help people. You know, people have the stereotype about female engineers, but the fact that I can actually do it is very, very exciting and it's fulfilling for me.
People see me on rooftops and always looking at me and their eyes are always on me. Of course, it could be weird and challenging, but then those are things that actually have made me want to continue and be better at what I do.
Faced with a population boom that has sent carbon emissions soaring and stretched power supplies to breaking point, oil-rich Nigeria is now turning to renewable energy. Anu hopes this boom will create room for more female engineers.
People are not comfortable with women carrying out physical activities for engineering work, but that doesn't mean women aren't interested in it. They're just not given the opportunity to. And people do feel fairly strongly about it. So we've actually had a husband call. Someone's husband called me and informed me not to let his wife ever climb a roof, even though that's exactly what she wanted to do.
Rensource currently employs 11 female electric engineers, and Anu hopes this will inspire more companies to hire more women in the male-dominated sector.
We need to maintain the right ratios, and that we should have the discipline as companies to invest in that. In Nigeria, it is particularly difficult because oftentimes your priority as a business is to grow and to hit your numbers. So the idea of focusing on gender ratios or anything like that sometimes feels like a distraction.
According to Nigeria's Ministry of Power, the country needs more than 10 times its current electricity output to guarantee supply for its 198 million people, nearly half of whom have no access at all to power. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, before we go, let's take a quick look at Africa's currencies today. South Africa's rand was weaker as focus shifted to the US election, while locally investors are waiting for the latest producer inflation data expected this week. In Nigeria, the naira has remained fairly stable on both the official and black markets, but of course traders are saying it could weaken further at the black market following the CBN's cut in interest rates last week. And that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.